I want to propose that we start with our program, given the fact that we were scheduled to start at 3 o'clock. We are a bit late, almost an hour and 5 minutes. And obviously we'll have to do some catch up. And I must from the onset apologize for starting late. And I hope that you will accept our apology. My name is Jongizizwe Dlabati. I am the councillor in the seat of Ekurhuleni, who has also been given the responsibility of being a chief whip of council. I still regard myself as a legitimate council, despite the fact that there are uncertainties whether or not we are going for the next local government elections. So, Deputy Minister, we are at the mercy of both the Constitutional Court and probably the Parliament of South Africa. I have been requested to be the program director for this occasion, an occasion really which marks the launching of a very important book in our political trajectory. And without a doubt, the book was probably influenced by the 2016 local government elections, and the introduction on the book itself does point to the outcome, having marked a crucial turning point in the country's political landscape, in particular local government. And of course, the 2016 local government outcome should also be seen in the light of a maturing democracy, wherein the electorate is becoming much more wiser and perhaps sensitive about the manner in which political parties are governing, given the opportunity. As a result of no absolute winner in the last local government elections, the outcome therefore pointed us to a surprising, if not undesirable situation where some of our municipalities needed to be reconstituted in a form of coalition. And of note is that we were not ready, or rather there was no blueprint on how these coalitions needed to be set up. This therefore presented a dynamic situation, especially given the fact that all political parties carry a particular mandate. And of course, there was a dynamic on how then do you compose government itself. And there was also another dynamic of what will be the expectations coming from all these different political parties that are forming themselves. So this launch, ladies and gentlemen, and its session will really give us or share more light about the coalition itself, the intricacies of coalition, the lessons, and probably how to improve the coordination for future purposes. Therefore, the compilation of this book that we're about to launch today, namely Future Realities of Coalition in South Africa, not only will it provide a reflection, but I assume that it will further provide a great contribution towards the body of knowledge. With that, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge amongst ourselves the Honorable Deputy Minister Nkari Meng. Let me also acknowledge the Executive Mayor, Councillor Mzwandile Masina, who is the author, a passionate politician, and of course, an activist for social change, who takes a keen interest on matters of economic transformation. I also want to acknowledge in our presence, MEC Tasneem Mutara. Let me also acknowledge MMC Nkosindipile Xhakaza, who is responsible for finances, economic development in the city of Ekurhuleni. I also take this opportunity to acknowledge Dr. Imogen Mashazi, who is the city manager in the city of Ekurhuleni. Let me acknowledge Professor Masere Mule from the South African Association of Public Administration and Management, known as SAPAM. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Mziligas, wa Africa from Sunday Independent. Equally acknowledge our coalition partners, the AIC, PAC, Patriotic Alliance, and IRASA. And I can see Alderman Isaac Bach is part of us. I also wish to acknowledge the leadership of the African National Congress in absentia, and I think as and when they arrive, we will acknowledge. But most importantly, we have our NEC member, Comrade Mduma Nana. You are acknowledged on behalf of the leadership of the ANC. Most importantly, Executive Mayor, I would want to acknowledge Umama Wasekaya, Mrs. Snazo Masina, and of course, all other invited guests who are really privileged to have been chosen amongst many, for we know that the COVID-19 comes with its own limitations of numbers, and it could not be us who are contravening. So all other guests are really appreciated. And let me also acknowledge everyone who took it upon himself or herself to connect virtually, because this launch is also streamed live, and we are all acknowledging everyone who is connected virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, this therefore takes me to the very first item of our program, which is the welcome. And the person that has been designated to welcome us is other than the city manager of Ekurhuleni, Dr. Imogen Mashazi.
Director, the Chief Whip of Council, Executive Mayor, and the guest of honor, Councillor Mzwandile Masina, the First Lady, distinguished guests, members of the media. Before the members of the media, sorry, I must follow protocol. I must greet our special guest, the Deputy Minister for Local Government, Ms. Thembi Nkadimeng, the NEC member, Ntate Mduma Nana, and the media will be represented by Ntate Mziligas Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is an honor to be given a chance to have a word at such a massive event. This day proves that with innovation, dedication, and hard work, we can achieve a lot, Executive Mayor, albeit the hard times that the world is grappling with. We have lost many of our loved ones as we continue staving off the brutal, multi-headed monster that is called COVID-19, which has drastically changed our lives. We can no longer attend funerals of our loved ones. The social distancing, it's a must and a must for all of us. In actual fact, Executive Mayor, to have such a positive human interest gesture at the heart of COVID-19 pandemic is a much needed interruption from daily sadness and shock, which reminds us of the other realities we face as a country. It is a fact that government in South Africa is entering a new terrain that had never been traversed before 2016 local government elections. Indeed, we have been fortunate as a city of Ekurhuleni to have been among the first metros to explore the era of a coalition government. Not only that, we entered this era not knowing what to expect, but through the astute leadership of the city, led by yourself, Executive Mayor, with your legislature and the caucus led by the Chief Whip of Council and Tate Jongizize Hlabathi. I'm not used to calling you that. That's why. We're able to navigate our way to stability and success while other sister municipalities could not make this work. We achieved the clean audit. We improved service delivery. We built more houses and reservoirs just to improve our water networks. We electrified a lot of informal settlements, and the list is long. Because of limited time, I cannot mention others. The world knows that you have actually achieved as a leader. Everyone was witness to what happened in our sister metros, that is Tshwane, City of Joburg, and Nelson Mandela Bay. As that happened, Ekurhuleni remained afloat. Through the dedication and determination of the relevant stakeholders to see the coalition succeed. We salute all the coalition partners in Ekurhuleni. They have been positive towards whatever program the city introduced. As the term of office Executive Mayor, I remember very well, you introduced a 10-point plan, which the coalition partners supported wholeheartedly. We have achieved through that plan that shows leadership and strategic leadership in essence. Having worked closely with you and the coalition partners over the years, ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt that this book offers a very strategic insight into the future of coalition in the country and how this coalition can be managed for the betterment of the living conditions of South Africans. It is my view that your reflection as shared in the book themed Reflections on Coalition Governments in the Metros 2016-2021 should be a nice and empowering read shared by a man who has been at the helm of the most successful coalition in the country. Ekurhuleni, as we speak, is the best run metro under your leadership. Your support towards administration, your non-interference in the running of the city has actually made us to be where we are today. Executive Mayor, I know how much sleepless nights you spent in this project, but I'm equally convinced as well that it was not for nothing. I know that you are a new father, you are a father to small children. Aluta is ±2 and Cuba is not even a year old, but you managed to write this book. Thank you so much, First Lady, for the support that you are giving to our Executive Mayor to be able to do his work as a councillor and as the Executive Mayor of the city, and as a father too, to the beautiful children that you gave birth to. Today, that hard work and dedication is here in front of all of us to see. Thank you for letting us into your thoughts around the sensitive subject matter. And I do wish that God gives you more strength and wisdom, because you are the first Executive Mayor in the country to appoint a female. And this is a female month. I must remind everyone that the Executive Mayor is quite sensitive to gender equality, and very sensitive to gender-based violence. And thank you very much, Executive Mayor. And you are all welcome to the occasion or to the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, City Manager. I know it was difficult to say in Tate Jongizize Hlabathi because I remain your son. it is just a mere government responsibility, but I do remain your son. And thank you very much for welcoming us. We can attest that the executive mayor does believe in women empowerment. And it was no mistake for him to propel a view that a city manager of such a huge metropolitan can be a female. And I can say without a doubt, city manager, that you did not let that boldness to a disappointment. And of course, at the end of the term, all shall be revealed in terms of the extent to which a female city manager has been able to steer a stable and a financially prudent city of Ekurhuleni that continues to deliver. With that, it takes us to the next item, which is the keynote address by the author himself of the future realities of coalition in South Africa. I did not know, Executive Mayor, that you were busy with this project. All of a sudden, we had to respond to interviews. And today really is a culmination of the hard work that we have put into these projects. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the son of Ekurhuleni, a cadre of the movement who's tried and tested and went through different structures of our organization. I introduce to you a bureaucrat of note for the fact that prior to him assuming some of his political responsibilities, he was part of the bureaucracy and the administration. So he is a person who is well vested about municipal governance. I introduce to yourselves an academic in his own right, because he continues to develop his knowledge. And this book confirms that particular aspect. A former deputy minister in our country who's familiar with the national dynamics and the national politics, as I said, passionate about economic transformation. And of course, the regional chairperson of the ANC in the city of Ekurhuleni, who is presiding over a political organization that is stable, that is pulling towards the right direction. But more so, I introduce to you the executive mayor of the city of Ekurhuleni, who is the author, to come and give us a keynote address about the book itself, as we welcome the executive mayor, Mzwandile Masina.
Thank you very much, Program Director, our Chief Whip, Councillor Jongisizwe Labati. Let me take this opportunity to greet the Deputy Minister in the Republic of South Africa, who's also our outgoing President of SALGA, according to her, Mete Mbingadimeng. Greet our member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, and Demanana, who is also a close friend in the struggle. Greet our Provincial Secretary of the African National Congress, Tate Jacob Kawe. Great MMC Kagaza, a member of Parliament, Mayor Peace Mabe. Greet our coalition partners, and in particular Ndade Per, who's here with us. Great members of the media, leaders of business, as well as religious community. Greet the First Lady, who has worked tirelessly with myself and the team to ensure that we're able to proceed with this work. There are few pleasures in life greater than standing before an audience, some which is here, some which is obviously following through the live visual connection. That is of people who are vested in ideational space to discuss issues that are critical to the future of South Africa. This afternoon marks not just the launch of the book, but the beginning of the conversation that we need to have at the center of the national discourse. The French poem and the novelist Victor Hugo argues that there is nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And the relevance of this statement find expression in the discussion that we are giving birth to, a discussion that is both uncomfortable and deeply necessary. You will understand why I am saying this coming from the ruling party. We, at some point, thought that we were going to rule and have sought to theorize this shift. We have sought to make sense of the paradigm shift that transpired in 2016. For some, it was a spontaneous occurrence that was precipitated by a myriad of socio-economic and political circumstances, resulting some from the internal ANC issues. But while such an analysis degree of legitimacy, it does not fully capture the essence of the evolution. In the future realities of coalition in South Africa, I make the contention that the loss of electoral power by the ANC in the metros and other local district municipalities was a product of both internal and external factors. The ANC was battling with its own internal crisis. This is not a debate. All of us, because the ANC is an open democratic organization, we do interact with this. The organization had been fractured significantly, leading to the election. In the book, I try to elaborate on some of these fractures, which include but not limited to the dissenting views on the electoral candidate. On one hand, we will say, this one has done wrong. On the other hand, the ANC will give you that person to be on the board, then you have to advocate for that particular individual. But also, years of maladministration and corruption in the state, and specifically within government, was also a significant factor that contributed to the electoral outcome. Part of the sparking of the conversation on the future realities of coalition government is also about telling no lies and exposing lies wherever they are told. The truth is that the ANC's good track record in government has also been marked by a self-created crisis that had a direct impact on the lives of our people and the very future of the country. But these crises were heightened by the prevailing global balance of forces where we are seeing the re-emergence of the right-wing politics in both geographic spheres. The global South has not been spared with the sweeping wave of right-wing politics that are characterized by narrow nationalism, racism, xenophobia, and sexism. It is not an accident of history that leading to the 2016 local government and the following them, there were racial tensions were heightened in the country. The electoral support for the right-wing party to the right, a shift that signaled the trying times for the progressive forces whose ideas have ceased to capture the imagination of our people. Curiously, this transpires at the time when the global inequalities are on the increase. In this book, Program Director, this particular reflection is also theorized. Without delving much into the content of the book, which I encourage those of you who are here, but I know many of you have been purchasing this. I want to touch on the central thesis that the coalition seemingly are inevitable future reality in South Africa and other parts of the developing world. The diverse views from the population is not allowing the continuation of one-party domination system. So therefore, we need to start to begin to think, how best do we advance some of the policies that we have been that have been part of our movement broadly. But while the future realities of coalition government is inevitable, of great interest to government practitioners, academics, and ordinary people alike, should be the question of what is the texture of this coalition government ought to be. In South Africa, we have not yet begun to develop a blueprint on how we should construct coalition government. I was making an example that, Prof, that if we tried to get the different coalition agreements, there's a 2-pager there, 10-pager there, 20-pager there, no context. So you see that we do need to start thinking about this phenomenon and how best we can be able to assist the country to ensure that we don't fail governance in our country. This is undoubtedly the main factor behind the collapse of the coalition in some of the metros, as said here by my colleagues, which for many reasons has, we have managed, at least in our area, to keep the coalition stable. The texture of coalition is critical to their stability, inter alia the stability of local government and the country at large. How do we construct coalition government? With whom do we enter into coalition with? These are some of the silent questions that the book seeks to answer. In brief, I contend that the coalitions are possible where parties converge, where parties that converge are I contend that the coalition are possible where parties that are converge are either political opponents and not class enemies. Political opponents, those sit on the opposite bench, have a similar or identical aspiration for the country and its people. They are fundamentally in pursuit of national democratic society, that the rights, the justice of the past, the injustices that continues to rear in the democratic dispensation. The important task of political leaders right now is to critically assess who is an opponent and who is a class enemy. Where ideological character converges, there is a room for engagement. Where there is a diverse, there must be a recognition that entering into a coalition has a potential to wreak havoc within the institution of government and broader society. And that's what we've seen, and also in our interaction broadly in relation to the book, we do get a sense that it's important to make sure that when we enter into a coalition government, there is something common that brings you together. The panel discussion that will come will also attempt to deepen some of these reflections and also to answer some of the questions we have about the future realities of coalition government in South Africa. They will do so in depth. It is necessary to recognize that there is a shift from a battlefield to an arena of minds, and it is with this arena that we must contribute to intellectual work, such as being what we are attempting in the book, and the conversation have to begin in earnest. We sit on the threshold of the 6th local government election since the dawn of democracy on the 27th of October 2001, bearing a postponement in mind. Millions of South Africans will be casting their votes for government of their choice, exercising their constitutionally enshrined right of self-determination. What lesson, if any, have been learned from 2016 elections? And how, if at all, do they help us to prepare for multiple scenarios that could potentially play themselves out as we have seen? What are we going to do as parties that would have been voted in terms of moving forward? Answering these questions is an important exercise in providing the theoretical intervention for the various institutions and structural transformation that need to happen in South Africa's democracy to work effectively and truly represent the will and aspiration of the people. Through this book, we're beginning on the quest, and this panel discussion will situate the conversation within the historic context that will help us to construct a barometer that traces the foundation and the foundation of the evolution of the party political system as we know it. In doing so, we can make a concrete assertion about what needs to be done and how. We invite all those peace-loving South Africans to begin this conversation with ourselves as we mark this new chapter that we deem necessary in our country. And I do believe that we have worked with the best who have been giving us advice in terms of some of the theoretical construct, and I'm convinced that the book will make a contribution in the future of South Africa. I am aware that the program director will make some of the critical announcement in terms of how far reach the book has gone since it has been published. And I hope, Prof, that very soon you will then be able to take the book out so that our people can begin to have this kind of uncomfortable conversation. We have been interacting with a number of other political parties to source different views about where we should take South Africa if eventualities come. I have no doubt that many progressive left parties do agree that we need government that is going to deliver services to our people, government that is stable, government that is corruption-free. These are the things that are critical, and we argue in the book as a final point that we've got to think about the framework on how, in an event of coalition, what is it that we can do as those parties entering into a coalition, so that at least there's a basic framework and then we're able to do our work. With those few words, I would like to thank SAPAM for the contribution they have made to make sure that the book is published. I would like to thank the Mickey Klaya Foundation, who assisted us to make sure that the book becomes a reality, because you needed to have a number of researchers to be able to do this kind of work in the short period of time that we've been able to do. To thank all those who have contributed, and I'm certain that we are going to have other launches somewhere, but we thought it's important we start here at home in Ekurhuleni because many of the ideas come from there. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our coalition partners who have stood firm in government, but also in the book as you will go through it. They have given us a critical feedback as the African National Congress about things we've done right, about things we have not done right. And I think that we needed to have that section that is frank, talking to us so that we can be self-critical. And I believe that their role in ensuring that there is a stable government in the city has contributed in ensuring that we can put these ideas into test. It has not been an easy 5 years. At some point, we also did not believe that we were going to finish the term of office, but because we had a common purpose and a common approach, we were able to ensure that both at the level of the ANC as a party, at the level of caucus, but at the level of coalition, we take each and every person into confidence. I would like to thank my colleagues in the PMT, in the mayoral committee, and all other structures, including caucus that have worked with us, my staff who have worked tirelessly to ensure that this becomes a reality, to my wife who has become part of my office. By extension, she has done a great job with the team to ensure that we have this day. We believe that this contribution will help the country to move forward. I was asked by Mzilikazi wa Africa some of the critical questions that have to do with the ANC and general politics. And the book, we attempted to give him some of the frank answers. And I do invite you to look into the book so that you can get to see how vigorous. And we were not sure with the team whether we must talk to him, you know, how he can push the envelope. But we thought that it would be critical that we have someone who's not going to be nice to us, because we wanted this book to be a frank piece of work that is going to assist us. Thank you to each and every person who has made a contribution, to my friends, to my colleagues, to my comrades, and to everyone who has made time to be with us here today. And I invite you to get a copy. We'll sign the copy, but more importantly, I know we've got this culture of just buying books and not reading them. So it will be important that these books are read. But I'm encouraged by the report I've received, and I'm sure he will share those notes with us, because we needed just to stick to some of the issues that we've raised here. Thank you very much for being here with us. That's much appreciated.
No, thank you very much, Executive Mayor and the author of the book, Future Realities of Coalition in South Africa. And I think in his input, he was able to give us the background and the context, why the book. And of course, leadership is about foresight. And one of the foresight is to envision the reality that as this democracy matures and out of the historical outcomes, there is that reality that coalitions in South Africa cannot be ignored. Of course, Comrade EM coming from the ANC, it is not an ideal thing to have because we prefer an absolute victory, but we must be alive to the reality that these coalitions, they exist. I must say it is not an easy thing to coordinate coalition because Alderman Berg would want to be briefed each and every council about all the items. Sometimes they differ with you prior to the council, so there is a management that must take place. However, I think the main principle that brought us together is a singular objective of serving our people, good governance, the provision of sustainable basic services So in the midst of all these challenges, we invoke the principles and we agree. Thank you very much, Executive Mayor, for that input. At this point in time, I would like to call upon to the podium the member of the NEC, Comrade Mdu Manana, who is going to be our moderator for a panel discussion. My airtime ends for now.
Okay,
I will come back when you are done.
no problem. Thank you. You. No, thank you very much, Program Director. Well, my name is Mduduzi Manana, and I will serve as your moderator for this forum. Well, our goal today, obviously, is to launch this book, but it would also be prudent that we leave here having extracted some new thoughts, ideas, and fresh perspectives from other players in the local government space and from the media on the topic that is surely so thought-provoking, to say the least. So today, we do have an amazing panel. I'm not going to make a speech, I'm just a moderator. And they will surely share some insight on the future realities of coalitions in South Africa. So, but before we dive into the panel introductions, it's important that we establish some ground rules so as to understand how this is going to run. So, Program Director, ladies and gentlemen, each panelist will be given 2 minutes to make an opening statement. During the time of the opening statement, you will be, or you can start preparing your questions. Now, the audience will then pose questions to the panelists. You'll be given a minute to do this, after which then the panelists will have a minute and a half to respond to each question. Of course, we expect the audience to give each speaker an opportunity to be heard, and we also expect the audience to be audible. Okay, so now that the format is familiar to all of us, allow me to introduce the panelists. It's our Deputy Minister of COGTA, fresh from the box, the President of SALGA, who's also the former Executive Mayor of Polokwane Local Municipality, Umama Uthembi Nkarimeng. I think at this point, I would ask her to come and join us in front. Any side. It's Women's Month, so. We also have Mkhaya Mr. Mzilikazi Africa, who will also be from the Sunday Independent, will also be a panelist. Ngizocela naye ukuthi ezeka phambili. We also have from SAPAM, Professor Maseru Mule, who will also be one of our panelists. Prof, please join us. Well, thank you very much. I will now give each of the panelists an opportunity to make some remarks or an opening statement on the topic, which many speakers have already reflected on. I will start with our Deputy Minister, since it's Women's Month, but also, well, she's not new because she's been in this space for so long, but she is new in the portfolio or in the ministry of COGTA. She is our Deputy Minister of COGTA, Methembi Nkadimeng.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Ndu. And let me greet, I won't go into all the various categories, but good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think coalitions can work. They come with great experience for them to work. They emanate from a shared sense of a vision. Unfortunately, we are 2 worlds apart from realities that informs parties currently as they stand in South Africa. We also have not matured politically, even to be in opposition. You know, if you think coalitions are the only problems, then go and look into the instabilities where there's no coalition in any councils, but there's a difference between processes and how you think about a vision of a particular area on how to serve their communities. In some instances, we tend to just differ for the fact that the point is raised by A and therefore B automatically has to differ if it's A who's raising that point of view. But also we may have to look at desirably what was the legislation intending to achieve in South Africa. Because I think coalitions are as a result of a trust deficit at local government, which made people to pull back and not visit the polls. And therefore you have no ultimate winner. But the anticipation of what the legislation thought about is actually what was ambitious, and there's nothing wrong about being ambitious, but was 2, if not 10 steps ahead of what we are thinking. For example, look at the genuineness of the legislation. Community members must attend a IDP. That hall is empty. So communities actually find it difficult to have time to come and give you their views, aspirations, their dreams about the area and the community that they reside on. Yet their expectation is to be interpreted correctly and delivered on. To an extent that at the 20 years of local government, which was 5 December last year, very little is said about what was achieved, which is quantifiable, versus the gap which you still have to cover. Because unfortunately, the city manager here can come and say, I've done 29 reservoirs, and we don't count that, but we count 1 reservoir that is short at a particular corner, which you possibly might have not covered in this 5-year term. And on the determination of that, we say nothing has happened. And the last part that I would want to raise is to emphasize, which I think is what leads to coalitions and this trust deficit, is accountability at local government. If we don't talk about accountability, we then need to prepare more and more and more about coalitions. And the reality of coalitions is as a result of no show up to a vote. But even in municipalities where there are no coalition, Prof, maybe this is a study you may have to take next time. It's very interesting to show the decline in the percentage of the show up of the voters in those areas. I mean, I've been a mayor of Polokwane until Friday last week. It's a 90 council seat. For the first time, the entrance of EFF took around 18 members of the PR representative from the African National Congress. And they had 26 in total. And the African National Congress had only 12 PRs. So you go to a township like Mangoing, you see that in the 2011 elections, there are 2 major wards there. The ANC in the other year won with over 60%. In one of the wards, it won with 49%. So the formula at a ward level does not necessarily look into a 50+1. Even if there are 10 people who attend to vote at that voting station, if I've got 8 and you've got 2, I'm the winner. But the calculation then punishes you at the end because you wanted an inclusive government. It doesn't calculate PR as you do in the provincial and national assembly. As you get a ward, the other parties get a percentage counted into the number of votes that they got into the voting station. That is why you have a city of Johannesburg, which went almost all the wards, but could not reach a 50% to form a government of its own, but is relying on a GLE today. I think let me stop there. There's quite a number of issues that we may have to look into, but it's a very interesting, and I must congratulate the executive mayor on scratching the surface and forcing us to come and face these realities, because if we can't come into a sense of a vision together as political parties defined by what we think is best for our communities, because it's simple and straightforward: provision of basic services, local economic development in the space where people are, so that they could be able to thrive in the space that they are staying in.
Well, thank you very much, DM. What I'm getting from you is that coalitions do require a greater deal of maturity from all political parties, and as well as accountability. Well, thank you very much for that. Prof, it's now your turn to...
Thanks, moderator, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Congratulations to the executive mayor for the wonderful book. I've always been asking myself the question, what is that you do so differently, that your coalition turned out different from many others? And I'm glad it was like together a case in Ekurhuleni within the and maybe let me just, before I get into the issue, just point out when proposals we are saying that any proposals that come to us to publish a book, it should not have a name. And we just deal with the essence of what is actually being proposed. And I must say that the editorial, or rather the editorial was so happy, because your city has always been a question was in many because mass Yes, when we did the book, there are certain challenges that are there, but you manage to make sure that your coalition funds, which also puts me to another point which the city mayor he attributed that to your leadership. And this is where now I just want to make a quick input that and make it within the context of great appreciating what you did as a politician that you managed to walk in the leadership way. And that much appreciated. I've always been having a serious challenge, particularly in the context of where I am, that we teach leaders, right? And you look at what constitutes what we teach in terms of the field of leadership. And it's based on the practices from elsewhere, not here. And I feel that perhaps as an African, we should take a conscious decision not to fortify the biography of Masisi. We should go beyond the biography. We wrote the biography of Buhari. We wrote the biography of Mandela. It's high time that we need to theorize their leadership. Take for example, how can a man manage an organization be absent from the basic cultural way of manage the organization for so many years, and he will still succeed in terms of making sure that the organization survives. There is a particular leadership which is part of the mainstream leadership literature. And to that extent, I believe that our students in the lecture deserve to know exactly what is that
which made this person an outstanding leader to be able to lead, yet he was not actually where he was supposed to lead. And that for me is something that I appreciate. I got so happy when you put together your experiences, because this is part of how we learn about leadership of our public representatives. You make a very important argument that yes, coalition is the future. It's quite interesting because Vusi Maimane made the same argument at some point. And I said that we need to answer that question within the context of a particular reality which is starting to take shape across the globe. There is this notion of new municipalism, right? Which seeks to say that the future in terms of how we manage urban affairs will no longer lie in a party-driven system. In other words, the new municipality is a notion that seeks to reimagine, right, the management of public affairs, underscoring the significance of social justice, right? And largely, the new municipalism seeks to create, or rather come up with a system that municipal affairs will be managed by a particular arrangement which is citizen-driven, right? If you go to Barcelona, the first woman who became the mayor of that city was not from any political party, but he was a product of a particular citizen-driven movement. So I'm raising that issue to say that as South Africa, we are saying that the future lies in coalition, but we need to also take into account the possibility of this global phenomena, right? In terms of the extent to which at some point it might also play itself out in our own context and over time become a reality. Let me just stop here. I think I won't be on my 2 minutes, sorry.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thanks, Prof. You can see the energy oozing out of the Prof's statement, of course, saying, let us be alive and be awakened to the future that we are heading to, and that a party-driven system, as our democracy matures, may be something of the past. Well, that's a reality we await to be part of, and I'm sure with this book we'll be able to navigate through whatever challenge and difficulty that we may encounter, because as you said, coalitions are indeed difficult to manage, but they require a greater deal of leadership, or rather leadership traits that will be able to manage and understand how we can go about leading our people differently. Otherwise, okay. Ingawe manje.
Yes, good. So I'm a journalist, so I'm not a politician. So I'll just take you briefly. Like on the 27th of April 2015, I was summoned to one of the minister's house in Waterkloof. So I go there and the minister says to me, comrade, I've been tasked to recruit you back into the ANC. So I asked the minister, I said, okay, Mr. Minister, I hear you, but you know I'm out of politics. That's the decision I made long time ago. And I said, I'm not coming to politics. I want to do something completely different. So I said, Minister, you see, if you can tell me which ANC I'm coming back to, then I'll decide whether I want to come back into the ANC or not. So the minister looked at me and said, what do you mean? I said, the ANC is divided. It's no longer the ANC that we used to, the ANC that I grew up into. And I said to the minister, you watch the next coming local government elections, you'll see what I'm telling you. It's because people are not going to vote for the ANC. It's not because people maybe hate the ANC, it's because people are tired of unfulfilled promises. People want to see service delivered. People want to see progress. People want to see better life for them. So as it happened, the local government election happened. So it happened that when the results were forthcoming from Pretoria, I got a phone call from Mamumini. She calls me, she said, look, I just got a phone call. I just got a strange visit and I want your advice on it. So I said, so she said, come to me. I go there to her house, say, look, the ANC has sent to Ubavu Jeff Hadeb to come and talk to me because now they're realizing that they're losing in the local government elections. And they want me to speak to Julius so that Julius might come to bed with them. What's your view on that? Like, Mama, I'm a journalist, I'm not a politician, so I can't help you. But the problem here is ANC was so arrogant. That's why they were caught wanting. That's why when it happened, they didn't know what to do because all along they were saying they're going to govern until Jesus come back. So I think God answered South Africans' prayers. The people of South Africa went down on their knees. They said, please, Jesus, come back because we are tired of this ANC. So the local government election in 2016 taught the ANC a lesson. Stop your arrogancy, listen to the people, and find working partners, because what happened in 2016 is going to happen again. So for me, I was happy when the executive mayor came with this idea, because when he bounced the idea to me, I asked him one question. I said, so is this an acknowledgement that ANC is going to lose power at a certain stage in our lives? Because now we have to start looking at coalitions. It's also happened that yesterday it was the launch of a book by Dr. Ralph Muter, The Last Decade of the ANC. So is this the last decade of the ANC? Is the ANC going to survive through coalition from now going forward? Or is the ANC going to be like a phoenix, rise from the ashes again? Those are the questions we need to ask ourselves. Again, is the coalition, the pride of the ANC is being the governing party whenever metro it is. What does it mean now that they are forced into going to coalition? And some metros with their enemies, not their friends. And some metros with their friends, of course. So is the coalition the future of South Africa? Or is the revolution within South Africans, and the evolution of politics is forcing ANC to stand in front of a mirror and ask itself very difficult and uncomfortable questions? That's the question. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thought-provoking indeed. Thanks to our panelists for their opening statements. Now the light is shining straight to my face, so I may not be able to see hands from the floor, from the audience. I am now going to allow those members of the audience who want to pose questions to the panelists, want to make some remarks briefly to do so. So I will note hands. Geez.
I can't see the light.
There's a hand at the back. There are two.
One towards the kitchen and the other one on the eye.
Okay. I can see you, my sister. Your hand is up. I think the red top.
I think that's Malaika.
I think it's Malaika, yes. Malaika, yes. Please go ahead, my sister.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the panel. for very thought-provoking submissions. I really want to ask a question, I suppose mainly directed towards Professor Masebule, as a theoretician of local government in particular. So the Deputy Minister spoke about the realities of low attendance in terms of democratic processes that take place, both in terms of voting, but also in terms of community engagement that happen across the country. Obviously, she's better placed to speak about this as a former president of SALCA. And Prof then linked that to the issue around the emergence of civil society in the space of national politics, right? And so for me, I find this very interesting because in the book, the executive mayor also makes the example of Mzimahulu local municipality, in which the deciding factor of how that municipality played out in 2016 was in fact a community organization called the Mzimahulu Community Association. And so we do see in fact what Deputy President Kadimeng is saying about how the discontent of ordinary people in participating in parties and politics has impacted or influenced, as Prof correctly says, the attitude towards people in terms of being part of parties and politics. And I wonder, because it doesn't come out very strongly in the book, around when you speak about the future realities of coalition governments, taking into consideration this low attendance that the President Minister Gadming speaks about, and of course the argument that Prof makes about the role of civil society. How do we theorize and locate the role of civil society and independent individuals who don't have any affiliation with parties and politics in coalition governments? What does it look like if next year we are having elections and the people that get the most support end up not being opposition parties, but individuals emerging out of community associations and such organizations? What becomes then our theorization of how we make sense and how we construct those particular coalitions? And that's largely for you, Prof.
Thanks, Comrade Malaika. There was another hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My question is directed to the Deputy Minister. If a coalition government fails to deliver services to the people, who should take the blame? And would this not cause apathy towards voters? My question also is linked to what Zilikas has said, that the people are tired of the ANC. I think people did not generally vote for the ANC. They did not vote for any other political party, but they decided to stay away from the polls. Maybe in some areas, yes, we've seen, but apathy, it is what is going to affect governments going forward. Maybe if that can be clarified, Zilikas as well, maybe if you can also try to unpack your understanding of apathy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Comrade Peace. Couldn't recognize the face, as the voice. Comrade Chief Whip.
No, thanks, Comrade Mdu. Zilikas, admittedly, the movement would have experienced its own challenges. I'm sure with the renewal processes, it seeks to address some of those challenges. Now, given your exposure to all different political parties and what they stand for in terms of their mission, aspiration, and how they want to take the country forward. In your view, with this reality of coalitions, do you strongly believe that coalitions can succeed outside the ANC itself, given what the ANC stands for and how historically the ANC would have worked together with the masses to arrive at the democratic dispensation? So the question is that, do you believe that at some point, if it so happened, will any other coalition succeed to lead the country to what the country aspires to be outside the African National Congress? Thanks.
Thanks, Chief Whip. MMC, was your hand up?
Thank you. And I think we appreciate the work of the executive mayor, putting together, this wonderful book. And certainly it will go a long way, in guiding, our work. But I just wanted the panel maybe on two issues, maybe that they can further expand on. The elections or the outcome of elections are as a result of different campaigns, different messaging. We talk about different manifestos that advocate different programs, whether it's the pro-poor program, and because we represent different constituencies informed by the conditions of our people, and the prioritization and reprioritization, I think, is one area that probably we need to look at in the interest of the people. Because while in Ekurhuleni we would have succeeded to ensure that the basis of the coalition is a program that benefits our people, but it might not be the case in Johannesburg, in Nelson Mandela, and the complications, because ultimately it is a voter, it is the member of the community that ought to benefit from local government. And I thought that maybe it was one area that you might want to enrich on, because we enter into the electoral program to canvass the votes, because the ultimate beneficiary out of that is a member of our community. And the second one is the issue of governance, good governance, because it's at the center of our communities. Whether you talk service delivery, but ultimately is how you observe, how you comply, and what is your probably impression, because it's one area that I think moving forward, we must not leave it. If we want to theorize deeper, that area to chance.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir. Can see your hand. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the EFF was mentioned here today, and if you take Ekurhuleni and you take the EFF votes and the ANC votes, the other parties did not gain votes. It's basically the EFF votes and the ANC votes was what the votes were before. And the thing is that I took a decision on behavior and stability. And I think what the EFF showed in Parliament, that you can't trust them with stability. I think that was where the decision was taken. And I think the main decision is to make sure that there is stability in metros in future when there's coalitions. And although the DA and the EFF had no coalition agreement, they had an agreement to work together, or the one party will support the other party. Right in the beginning, it was a recipe for disaster. And I think that the thing that the ANC and the EFF was not brought together in coalitions, I think it's a great achievement, but it also helped with stability, because once the EFF enter into agreements or coalitions, there will be no stability. I think they've proven it in Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is another hand at the back.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just my question is to the author. He spoke earlier on about a class enemy. There are, which I found quite a little disturbing that in a democratic setup, we can define any player within the political space as an enemy rather than an opponent or a foe. Now, it happens all over the world that you find parties that are on opposite sides of the ideological divide. It's a Labour Party and a Conservative Party working together. It happened with the, it happens, with the CDU and the SDP in Germany. They regularly, when there's no proper outcome, they are forced to work together and they don't necessarily agree on anything. And we see in Israel now, it's a messy one, and in various other countries, particularly in Europe. But what happens is that they agree on a minimum program. It's not necessarily ideology that unites them, it's that minimum program. Now, if the majority party in South Africa is to determine the possibility or impossibility of a coalition partner on the basis of the person that party is a class enemy. Let's say, for instance, like if we name it, I think the DA is determined, is classified by the ANC as a class enemy. There could be instances where there are common programs, minimum programs that the DA and the ANC could unite on, and actually to keep out perhaps a more populist right-wing force that could emerge in the future, or populist far-left force that could emerge in the future. So I'm just raising the fact that for us to be using that language in 2021 about a party being the class enemy, and also ruling out the possibility of ever being able to work together with a party on which there actually isn't that much of a difference on many policies.
Thank you, Mr. Makanya. There is no other hand. Well, thank you very much. Maybe let's just afford the author, the executive mayor, an opportunity to respond the pointed questions to him, after which I will then allow the panelists to respond to the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, the lights also. I can't.
Yeah.
The trend even worse here. Thank you very much, Tate Mondli Makanya, for the question. In the book, we have a number of examples. For instance, there is a municipality somewhere in the Western Cape where the ANC and the DA have a coalition government. The challenges that you pick there, you realize are similar to the challenges that we all experienced, because these were metros in Nelson Mandela, in Johannesburg, and in Tshwane. Independent party led by Councillor Isaac Berg. They represent red players. It's a red players association. When when the situation occurred that we should form a coalition government, we analyzed a number of parties. We engaged a number of parties, and it became easy on the basis of principle. And I think that it became easy on the basis of principle that we could agree with them, because they said, look, if you can provide stability, do service, good governance, no corruption, we'll work together. We worked with them. We took a number of smaller parties, came together, but the experience that has come, because we're not just looking at ourselves, we're looking at the future of the country. It's important that in the three major parties in South Africa, the two parties do agree ideologically on a number of things. The others are extreme. So there will be that, in the interest of the country, it will be important that a conversation must ensue. We know that in 2016, it was too early when they were formed, so everyone was angry. When Mzilikazi was relating this story, we had gone to see Mama Winnie. She was telling us the same story, and she was concerned about Nelson Mandela. So when we engaged the leader of the EFF, who was also invited today, he was unwilling because he wanted to punish the ANC. You can see what happened yesterday in Johannesburg. The ANC was able to install the mayor, make sure that the city is stable. So this point is argued, and we've looked into different cases to come to this conclusion that it is easier to work with those that are ideologically inclined with yourselves, and it is more difficult to work with those who've got other. So you will have an opportunity, if you go through the book, to see those different experiences, including what has been raised about Metsimaholo. It's a different situation where you have the ANC, SSCP not having enough votes to come together, but they need a community organization to work with them because they are closer to each other. And I hope that I've attempted. I said never mind the language, but as you correctly say, DA is extreme on the number of policy position of the African National Congress. So it will be difficult for them. For instance, if you go to Parliament now on the expropriation of land without compensation, you are unlikely to get a vote from a DA, then you are likely to get a vote from the EFF. So those are considerations, but what the book gives us as a scenario is that the ANC will always become that critical player when those coalition governments are formed. Therefore, it must ensure that it engages, And I did give you that case of the Western Cape, that it's not easy because you hear the ANC is in opposition bench there in Cape Town. When you speak to the leadership of the ANC, you get a different experience because they say, we reside in communities, there are no services in Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, and all those areas. And there is no prospect of those services coming to the township because of the ANC government. So it's important, therefore, that if you were to have the emergence of community organizations, the emergence of stronger parties to the left, it will be important that we take back power so that we can ensure that majority of our people are served. I think that's the issue. Thank you very much, moderator.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm now going to hand over to our panelists, maybe starting with Mengadi Meng, followed by Prof, and forward to Mzilikazi.
Okay, thank you. I'll just touch on two areas which were raised. The first one being linked to the voter apathy and availability or show up for voting. It's interesting also to take a trend that Alderman here says the emergence of the other party, actually, which was contesting local government for the first time in 2016, the EFF. You then look into the numbers of the DA, quite a number of all these municipalities. It was also facing a decline, which means actually, it's not that there was a huge shift of numbers from one area to the other. Yes, the shift was there in terms of percentages, but the apathy kept people in their houses. They did not go out. Hence the example I made, for example, about the city where I have been an executive mayor, where the ANC still maintained its majority, but it lost quite a substantial number of its public representatives, but increased in its ward. Actually, took one ward from the DA in town, took another ward from the DA within our colored communities. So there has been differences, but the apathy is linked to no show up, lack of appreciation. Possibly we don't even communicate better of government programs and achievements which we have made to be able to indicate the issues that affect the bread and butter issues that affect our communities. The second part is, it has been very interesting for us as SALGA to observe. Of course, maybe the stats may change with time if the elections are postponed. The closing date for the registration of new parties to participate on the 23rd or 27th of October was closing on end July, or 26th or so July. There were no new political parties. And I'm saying the statistics may change possibly at the close of the date of, but we registered 8 new community-led structures. So whether you call it the ratepayers association or a consent group or whatever. And it begs us to ask a question, not only about coalitions, but even in areas where majority is held. For example, we all know the case of Makana, a very interesting case of Enoch Mkijima. But yesterday I went to Getleng municipality here in the Northwest, where there is even a court judgment which a party leads, but a court judgment gave a right to a community-led structure to run water provision services and the waste treatment plant of that town. A municipality went into court and the judge said, show cause why you must be given back the service. So I think the complexities forces us to really look into the 257 municipalities and say what is viable and what is not viable. Because part of the foundation of the problem in that municipality is that the phenomena of you need to have collection rate from your citizens to be able to run a sustainable municipality. Now, the association service is more one area of the town in terms of providing that water, and doesn't provide water into another area of the town. And now we have a problem because these residents, all of them, deserves the service, deserve water. But the association says we'll fix this portion ourselves with our own money. It's our story. That one, it's your story. Fix it and provide it for them. So there are intricacies that I think we need to look at because we tend to focus more on the name of parties and what makes that, but it also becoming a reality that communities themselves are going to push us into coalitions. I mean, in Harrismith, Maluti Opafu, there's a Komana group there, which has actually been running even posters saying, we'll pick up litter for you at 80 Rand a month. We will do this at whatever, please join. They are not forming a party, they are not registered, they're saying we'll offer you a service. And if you are happy with time, you won't even see a need to go to the board. I think let me end them too.
Thank you very much, DM.
She ended on a very important point, and what she was actually explaining, which I want to take it back to the question that came from Malaika. You know, what she was explaining theoretically, we characterize it as governance without government, right? In other words, you have got all these arrangements that seeks to provide services that are ordinarily provided by government, but outside the ambit of government. You know, that's what we call governance without a governance, which of course is linked to the issue that Malaika raised at the back there, which seeks to interrogate further the notion of the new municipalism. And maybe before I go to it as a theoretical construct, just to also lash on declining voter turnout, right? It is not a uniquely South African phenomenon. And you'll be very surprised that if you are to compare South Africa with many other developed democracies, you'll be very surprised that in fact, turnout in South Africa is actually better compared to even developed democracies. But the fact that we are experiencing voter turnout, for me, it doesn't necessarily represent voter apathy, right? Because when a person takes a conscious decision that I am not going to participate in the elections, the reason being 1, 2, and 3, and 4, he is taking a very serious political decision. And that for me is an expression of active citizenry, which however, does not translate into supporting any political party, right? And that may be interpreted as a stand against a party political system, which is not a uniquely South African phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon. Like as I indicated earlier on, in 2017, there was a huge conference in Barcelona convened under the theme Fearless Cities, right? And many cities of the world converged there. And in that conference, they embraced the notion of new municipalism, right? And this is how they actually theorize it. They are saying that the premise was that democracy begins where people live, right? And people live in localities, right? But in the localities where they lived, we had the party system. And what did the party system do? It concentrated power to political elites, right? And when that power go to a particular extent, we tend to see people squabbling over the political power. And it even became worse in our context, insofar as the coalitions are concerned. In some area, you are lucky, executive mayor. In some cities, there is a city that I know that they spend so much time in courts, not out there in the street providing services, right? This vexatious litigation, they're just endless. And yet, there are people in Hammanskraal who are exposed to water which is so stinky. You know, so this is what is happening in South Africa, but it is not a uniquely South African phenomenon. It has been like that in many other countries. And that ultimately led into a serious thinking about alternative to a party-led system. Right? And that is where the notion of new municipalism came into the picture. In other words, it seeks to look into the possibility of replacing a party-led leadership of the cities with citizen-led leadership of the cities. That is a global reality, which is emerging, and we need to be alive to that. And I'm saying what I'm saying at the back of my mind, thinking that we have so much said in South Africa that the future lies in coalition. And I am not so sure whether this future that you are talking about hasn't been passed by the passage of time, right? That in fact, the future that you are talking about is the past.
in terms of global trends. New municipality is a nascent system of managing urban affairs which seeks to extricate seeks to reimagine cities as the embodiment of social justice, the custodian of the common good, and the means upon which the management of public affairs could actually revolve around the citizen. In other words, in the center is the citizen, right? So this is what is emerging in terms of global trends as they relate to local government, right? So there is so much about that, Malika. I might not really be able to go into the deeper theoretical aspect around this notion that I'm talking about, but there is so much literature which is emerging around that. So I'm just saying it to say that, yes, we are talking about executive mayor. We are talking about, and not only you, by the way, you know, many people in South Africa are saying that coalitions actually are the future. And the question that I'm posing is that, isn't that maybe this future that we are talking about, in fact, it is actually history rather than future in terms of global trends? And yeah, that is, I think, the point that I wanted to go through. The executive mayor's book. He also talked about another lingering question of the post-apartheid state, which complicate governance. And we've been trying to nip that challenge in the bud, but it turned out to be elusive. I'm talking about the challenge of political administrative interface and the extent to which it actually weakens the capacity of the state to deliver, right? Another thing that we need to take into account as we reimagine our municipality is this neoliberal notion of contracting out, contracting out, contracting out, contracting out. To the extent that if we are to analyze the extent to which we have contracted out government, one tends to ask himself a question that, but what is that which this person is doing in the office? You get a person with 3 master's degree in HR, but the HR in the department is contracted out to some private company, right? And this because I believe that there are so many problems in our system that we have created. But also, if you look at those problems, they do have a particular ideological resonance. Because we know that when we took over in 1994, the only dominant ideological arrangement in terms of global order, it was neoliberalism. We just embrace it, right? But now it turned out that that thing doesn't work because we do have so many people who continue to be so poor, right? And these are some of the issues that we need to begin to talk about, and also including the question of technology as well. We are all happy for IR. We are all happy. But let me tell you, if we are not careful in terms of how we go about using the existing technology in the name of optimizing service delivery, we run the risk of widening the gap. The middle class, the rich will be very happy. But those people who are there will even be in a worse situation, right? So these are some of the issues that we need to begin to seriously interrogate as we reimagine our future. But thank you very much, Executive Mayor. The issues that you raised, I read the book, I read it again, and you are raising very important issues. And also you are writing the story of Ekurhuleni. The approach largely where I work is to also use case studies and case studies based on our own reality, because many a times we've been case studies that were based on the experiences of elsewhere, and this case cannot actually relate to what we are talking about. So it is book of that sort, which are based on the reality of our situation, that will come in handy in terms of facilitating that our students get the knowledge that they deserve, so that they could also be in a position to get from a very strong intellectual grounding, question certain things, but more importantly, contribute towards the solution of some of those things. Thank you very much.
We are in a lecture room, so we must just accept.
So the question is, will coalition work? I think if all parties involved respect the citizen, because remember, the citizen of a particular city, they're not waking up wearing a banner of a political party. They are the citizen of the city. They expect to get equal treatment, whether they voted for so and so or not. I'll give an example. There's a small town in Paul Petersburg in KZN. My wife is from there. So when you drive there, it's when you drive from town to a place called Baden, the tar road stops. And then I asked, why did the tar road stop? Say, no, that side, Zanel Makwazam Sibu on that side. So the ANC is trying to punish those people there. Why did they vote for? But the issue is, why are you using state resources to punish people who likely to vote for you? My village, I come from Bushbuckridge, a small village called Spambaya. We used to draw water from the rivers. We grew up studying under the tree until, because the place falls under the former Kazankulu homeland, until HW Nzam's built schools there. And I'm telling you today, the schools that are still in those schools that were built by a homeland system, there's nothing new in my village. There's no tar road, there's no clinic, there's no police station. And to a certain extent, from time to time, people still draw water from the river, because the taps that were built for the communities, most of the time they've been open during election times. After elections, they get closed until we have to wait for another elections, until the taps will have running water. The issue is, if we don't serve the people, regardless of who they might have voted for, we cannot punish South Africans for exercising their political rights to vote a particular political party. Like in my example, in my place, in my Bushbuckridge, most of the people there voted for Bushbuckridge Bra. And then my community is being punished for voting for Bra. They've been punished for exercising their political rights. So coalition will only work if we respect the people. If we, as political party, in a marriage of convenience, are jointly working for the people. We want to see South Africans living a better life. We want to create jobs. We want to see our people happy, so that next time they will turn into a voting station, say, okay, this government or this government, whether it's a coalition or not, is working for us. It's giving us hope. It's giving us a future. Let us go out there in numbers to cast our votes, so that they will continue doing what little they are doing for us. Again, when coalition is like a marriage of convenience, and they say, before you marry the daughter, you must study the mother. So now, there are political parties, they want to go to bed with the ANC, and they're looking at the ANC, they see all the fight every day. There's this faction, that faction, that faction, that faction. What are we giving to our potential coalition government partners? What example are we setting out there for our people and for them? Because I'm glad that Ekurhuleni set up an example for a coalition that lasted for 5 years. Other metros have suffered a lot. For me, I think the mayor and these people must tell us what was the formula that made them so successful when other metros squabbling, are fighting every day, taking each other to court, this one beating up this one in a council meeting and all of that. Ekurhuleni has been stable for 5 years, which is good. I think they should tell other people, this is the formula that we used. And if it works for you, take it and use it for your people, not as a political tool. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, colleagues. Let me thank our panelists for their great insight and for sharing with us. Well, this book is born out of experience. So the future that we all talking about is actually now. Well, Prof says it's in the past. So I hope that this book will provoke something in those, or rather to those people who have never imagined that coalition governments could exist. Maybe that reality has not visited them, but we have seen in many other areas where people have had to come together and work together. Ekurhuleni is one case in point. Mr. Mzilikazi of Africa has just mentioned that perhaps they'll have to tell us what their formula was and how they navigated through the many challenges that they may have encountered. I can also say, Deputy Minister, that in Parliament, though the ANC still classifies the DA as the class enemy, but when we leave the grandstanding in the chamber, but when we get to the portfolio committees, and portfolio committees are engine rooms of Parliament, we get to work together, we lobby one another. I've been a whip, and you go to a member of the DA and you lobby them for a particular bill to be passed or whatsoever. So it is possible that we can work together for the benefit of our people. So I don't think that having all these classifications could at a particular point prevent us from working together for the upliftment of our people and for the betterment of their lives. So I think the future is now. I think we've seen it happen here, but I think the book is calling on those who have not realized that or who have not appreciated that reality, that it is possible. And of course, many other things have been raised, issues of complacence. If we become more and more complacent, our people will be fatigued. In many other areas, they're already fatigued. The arrogance that Mzilikazi is talking about, people can't be loyal forever. They become fatigued over time and they withdraw their support. Some punish the ANC. They refuse to go to other parties. And over time, they will eventually go to other parties. But also, we are growing, a big group. There's a growing strata of middle class in South Africa. And these are people who are learned, who have been to school, and you can't just convince them with food parcels and all of that. You've got to acknowledge that they have opinions. You can put them through the NSFAS system, educate them, but they'll come back and challenge you. Yes. Because they've developed opinions and views about how their future South Africa should look like. So those are some of the things that we've got to appreciate as we navigate through to the future. Well, thank you very much. Let me thank our panelists. Thank you. Indeed, the audience, you've been It's not a very big audience.
Yeah. Very interesting.
But thank you for respecting me as the moderator, Mayor. Thank you. Program Director, I don't think you'll come back. I think I can do the honors. But I know I'll invite you to come back, yes, because the Mayor has already given you a task to just give details about certain things. But thank you, Mayor, thank you very much for affording me this opportunity as well to moderate. And for this thought-provoking book, indeed, it will touch everybody from far and afield to start thinking about the future we're heading to. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's not your. Oh.
Thank you.
Until injalo ke NC, once you figure stage takes over. But thank you very much, Comrade Mdu, and the panelists for a very insightful conversation. Safe to say that the conversation has begun, and not only Executive Mayor is it propelling us to talk more about the coalition arrangement itself, but I think we need to elevate the role of local government as an important sphere of government. Ladies and gentlemen, future realities of coalition in South Africa has begun to spark important conversation in the national space. Although the book has been released recently, the book has already generated great interest among scholars, government practitioners, and activists alike. They, like all of us here, are deeply invested in fashioning a higher civilization and in defining the path for our country now and beyond. It therefore gives me great pleasure to inform you that the book has been widely ordered, including various learning institutions in South Africa and beyond our shores. Some of the institutions of higher learning that have already shown an interest includes, amongst others, the University of Pretoria, Stellenbosch University, the University of Mpumalanga, Tshwane University of Technology, the Northwest University, as well as Wits University. The book has also received orders from Angola, Tanzania, and China by practitioners and academics who are interested in understanding the political milieu of South Africa. In addition to this, the book is now archived and available from the South African National Library and the Library of the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa. There is certainly no doubt that the book will be centered at the heart of the national and regional discourse. We thus have the responsibility to ensure that the discussion as contained in the book is being cemented in the political conversation, because the future of our civilization depends to some extent on how we make sense of coalition and their place in our existence. So it is quite clear that the book is now gaining traction. And I'm sure all of us seated here, we have ordered the book. Can I see by show of hands those who have bought the book? Okay, if you have not, before you eat, you must just buy one book. That will be your entry ticket to the early dinner that we are going to have. At this point in time, let me take this opportunity on behalf of the Executive Mayor, really thank all of you for being part of this launch. Sincere appreciation to everyone who really made a contribution towards the compilation of the book itself and its ultimate publication. We tend not to appreciate that work, but that is the most important work because it gives rise to this final product. And of course, thanks to our panelists and the entire support team that gave support to prepare and coordinate for this logistics. And I know Sisnazo, behind the scene, you did play a critical role. As I said, if you don't have the book, you must buy it. It is still 250 executive mayor. I'm afraid that its value might appreciate given the launch and really its importance in the political discourse. So the sooner you buy it, the better. And we hope, Prof, that the book will also find expression in the academic space in the sense that the curriculum itself must begin to institutionalize this important reality in our political discourse. I am informed that I must invite you to an early dinner, which is starting now at 6 o'clock. We will be ushered accordingly. And of course, COVID protocols are still prevailing. We continue where possible to wear our masks, sanitize, and ensure that by 8:30, at least we are preparing ourselves to leave so that we are not being disturbed by curfew at 9 o'clock. So with that, I would like to, on behalf of the executive mayor, really thank all of you for honoring the invitation. And I think we had a great and a successful, but most importantly, an insightful launch of an important book. It then takes us to the end of the launch as I adjourn and invite you for the dinner. Leaders, Executive Mayor, Deputy Minister, Prof. Z and the rest of us will follow.